Hey guys, welcome back to another Sims speed build video. I hope you guys are all having a great day so far. So today we're going to be creating a suburban family home within The Sims 4, and I feel like I've never really created one, so I'm super excited to show this to you guys. And we're starting off by building within San Sequoia, which is the world that came with Growing Together, and I'm building it on a 50 by 40 lot in case you guys are wondering. And I just started off by placing some stairs onto some terrain leveling, and I'm just like trying to get a proper level down because I wanted to have some sort of elevation that leads you up towards the entrance of the home. And the best way I was able to do that was just by like placing some simple stairs onto some simple elevation, just to ensure that it matched with the flat ground that we had working with at the front of the lot. And I also ended up adding these small little planters around the entrance of the home as well, which I feel like kind of made it feel and look a little bit more grand, while also trying to provide a bit of privacy. And I didn't really have any particular inspirational images to go off of. I pretty much just went on Pinterest and looked at a few real life suburban family homes, regardless of like their exterior texture, because I feel like some of them definitely have that really strong stone texture, some of them have that wooden sort of panel texturing around the exterior, but I kind of really like the mixture of both of them, and I wanted to incorporate that within this build in particular. And since I didn't really have anything to go off of, I was sort of just winging the entire exterior design as well as the floor plan as well, and I feel like it turned out very nice overall. And I feel like you can't really get a suburban family home really wrong, to be honest, because I just feel like it's really creative and you can definitely get like, you can make a lot of unique stuff when it comes to suburban family homes. And I feel like it's like a very versatile building style as well within The Sims, and I feel like it's definitely a very much of like a popular one. And yeah, so we just have a bunch of different gabled roofs across this entire build as well, and I left most of the roofing process within the speed build itself because I wanted to show you guys the overall sort of design and stuff as I went with the entire exterior. And yeah, I was just building as I went and just like hope that it looked nice and appealing. I really loved having the second story level of one of the rooms just overhanging from the rest of the build. I feel like it kind of gives it a more of a modern take on it, on like a suburban build. I feel like it felt cool to incorporate within the speed build. And I feel like if I had to summarize this entire speed build, I would guess that it's kind of like a mixture between a modern family home and a typical suburban house, because you definitely will be noticing quite a few modern elements scattered across this entire build, regardless of whether it's on the interior or the exterior. And for the front of the home as well, I really wanted to have some nice unique shapings for the roofing as well. So we have this small little corner where we have this curved roof piece that reaches towards the top of the actual second floor roofing. I feel like that was kind of like a cool feature, to be honest. And we have a few compartments that poke out from the main structure, which I feel like also gives it a bit more depth as well, especially since I did end up using quite a lot of different terrain paint as well as like a bunch of different wall paint as well. So I really love the pop that it gives to this build overall. And you'll actually notice that I kind of ended up having to skip most of it. I did actually end up having to go through so many different wall textures and like a bunch of different wooden panels, as well as like a bunch of different rock and stone textures and stuff like that for the wallpapers on the exterior, because I was really puzzled with what kind of design I wanted to go with. And I knew in my mind that as Adventure Awaits expansion pack comes out, I knew it did come with a few different wall swatches and stuff like that that I knew we might want to incorporate within this build. And we do actually end up adding quite a few of those objects within this build in itself. And right now we don't actually have the pack installed, so I haven't been able to actually like use those. So I was just kind of using what we currently had in the game, and I was actually really happy with the overall result of it. I kind of just went with this nice muted stone texture in the end for specific compartments around the build, but then most of the structure was this wooden paneling that came from Snowy Escape expansion pack, if you guys know which one I'm talking about. It's kind of like a nice grey color to it, and I really love the overall design. But for a while I was actually really in love with this plain sort of beige color that we got from the Booknook kit, the wallpaper that kind of has this really thin detailed for the wooden paneling. I feel like this looks very simple, and I feel like it feels a little bit more appropriate for interior builds, but I really loved how it kind of gave that unique color and design to the exterior, so I did keep it for a while, but that does actually end up changing as we progress throughout the build. And right now you guys can pretty much get a small gist of what the exterior of this entire home kind of ended up becoming to be, and I really love the overall design of it because I feel like like it definitely feels very unique to other type of builds that I tend to create within the Sims 4. And we do have a small little balcony on one side of the build as well, along with like that very huge compartment that pokes out from the second floor, which I really love because it's like kind of supported by columns, and I feel like that kind of gives it a bit more realism. And we do actually end up having to add a lot of different columns and archways throughout this entire build as well, mainly on the exterior, on like the corners and stuff like that, to make it feel a little bit more suburban, because I feel like a lot more suburban homes definitely do incorporate that. And I really wanted to have a nice looking pool area as well as like a nice manicured garden, and the best way I was able to do that was just by like placing this small little tiling around certain areas where I knew I wanted some walkways, and I ended up having a nice small little outdoor grass area as well, especially since we're on that specific terrain level. We couldn't really use the rest of the world, so I kind of had to take advantage of the space that we kind of had. And I feel like just by like doing this definitely helps with like adding a bit of realism to the game, to be honest. And I did try to add some small fencing around the entire exterior of the garden as well, but it just wasn't really working out, especially since it kind of looked a little bit too tacky in my opinion. So I ended up using some small simple half walls, which I feel like definitely worked out a lot better, especially since we're on a really tall, not really that tall, but like a relatively tall terrain height, that you wouldn't really have a lot of issues with people walking into your garden. But yeah, so we're moving back into the front end area of the home, and you guys can pretty much get a gist of what the general color scheme that we had initially for the build. But obviously I'm sure you guys have already seen the thumbnail, and it definitely does not look like this towards the end, because it does end up changing quite a bit, because I was really puzzled with what I really wanted to go for. And if you guys have been a member of the channel for a while now, and if you guys haven't, I highly recommend you guys to consider subscribing. You might notice that in my previous builds that I used a lot of this greenhouse haven glass windows, which has these very nice simple frames, and I ended up going for those ones within this build initially as well. However, this does actually end up changing completely. We go for something that matches a bit more of that suburban vibe that we're trying to go for. And initially I kind of use these as a way to sort of plan out where I wanted all of the windows to be and the placement of it, but I feel like since I feel like I used it quite a bit too much in my previous builds, I did end up changing it. However, I feel like if you guys do like this overall design, you guys can definitely go back into the game and change it up exactly how it is on this timestamp as I'm speaking. But right now we ended up turning to these other windows, and I ended up changing them one by one into these small little sort of like more woodeny typed framed windows, and I feel like these ones feel a lot more appropriate for a suburban family home like this, especially since it kind of has that nice wooden textures on either side of the windows as well. I completely forgot what they're called. I think they're called like the shutters or the blinds, but I really love the overall design that it gives to the window itself. It doesn't make it feel really bland or empty, especially with the wallpapers being quite bright and open currently. It doesn't really stand out too much from the wooden frames, but I feel like the contrast that we have from the black shutters definitely does help with making the windows stand out a lot more from the house. And we do end up changing a few of the roofings that we have throughout the entire build as well. So I really wanted to add some nice little skylights across this family home as well, and I ended up doing that in certain areas where I felt necessary. And I really love the overall end result that they give to any family home, to be honest. I feel like it just feels and makes the build feel a lot more lively, especially since we're playing from a top-down perspective in The Sims. I feel like it's really nice to have a nice view of the entire home overall when it's completely closed up, if that makes sense. And we didn't really go too crazy on adding a bunch of different foliage to the exterior of the build. Currently, we're just adding some small little terrain paint details here and there, but I didn't really want to overhaul this entire build and make it turn out into like a big jungle or like make it very confusing, because I feel like in terms of gameplay performance wise, I feel like it's very important to keep it on a minimal while also making it look as nice as possible. But at the same time, I was kind of like struggling to add a bunch of different foliage around this entire build, especially since we are on terrain. I don't really have this issue, especially since I don't use the terrain tool that often, but for these type of builds in particular where I do end up using it, it is kind of tedious to place a lot of greenery and like a bunch of different plants throughout the entire build, because they end up floating or they just don't really fit the vibe very nicely with the current terrain leveling that we have going across this entire build. I tried to flatten around the entire home completely to make it feel a little bit more smoother, but I feel like it didn't really help with adding a bunch of different foliage, so we did keep it to a minimal. However, I feel like it still definitely makes this home feel very complete, and I really do love the overall result of this garden. I feel like it definitely feels very carefully manicured and well taken care of, and I feel like that's the same way I feel about this entire home overall. I just feel like it feels very nice and clean and sophisticated. And yeah, I've recently been using a lot of this little grass patches here and there throughout a lot of my greeneries as well. It really helps with filling up a lot of the space, and especially these really sharp like aloe vera looking type plants. I really love the way they look, and I feel like they're very versatile in how you want to use them. And recently I've been using a lot of these like thin grass pieces as well, which I believe came from the Enchanted by Nature expansion pack as well. I might be wrong about that, but I really love the overall look that they give as well, because they feel really realistic. And I added some small little details here and there within the planter pots themselves as well, just two simple cypress trees as well, because I feel like out of all the trees that we have in the entire game, they definitely feel the most well manicured and well taken care of because of the shaping of it, and it just like fits very neatly in small tight spaces, which is quite common within this entire build overall. And yeah, just added some small little lavender grass pieces here and there and plant around the entire home, just like trying to make it feel as complete as possible, along with some small vines across the chimney areas as well as where we have that curved roof piece, just like trying to make the build feel a little bit more lively as well. And I really love how we have this sort of small little secluded garden area towards the back end of the home. And once again, you guys can pretty much see how I'm trying to place the grass around the terrain paint, and I was kind of struggling with just like trying to make sure that it doesn't float, because I really don't like when I have like a bunch of different objects that float on terrain. It just doesn't really help with making the build look as nice as possible, in my opinion. But yeah, I really love the overall small little details that we have gone through with the garden itself, especially with these small little rose bushes. Just add a bit of pop of color to this backyard area. But we do end up having a bunch of different furniture pieces added to this garden area, so it does end up feeling like very lively overall. And of course, a bunch of different potted plants and vases scattered across the entire build overall as well, so you do have plenty of different greenery and stuff like that throughout this entire build. And I really love this concept of having the two little stairs on either side of the outdoor patio area, and we have this centerpiece area that houses the fireplaces on either side. And I ended up adding these water fountain sprinklers on this side of the wall, which I feel like was kind of creative, just like pouring into the swimming pool water itself. It just kind of gives it a very luxurious vibe to it, in my opinion. It just feels like something that is not really that common within builds, so I kind of wanted to incorporate it within this one in particular. And I did end up going for this nice modern little tiling for the exterior of the build where we had the garden area, just like trying to provide something that looks very nice and clean and simple to look at. And we do also have a very spacious outdoor kitchen area as well, just hosting a small little barbecue area. And I also ended up adding these kitchen counter pieces which came from the Horse Ranch expansion pack, so I just felt like they felt the most versatile and appropriate for this space, for the exterior in particular, mainly because they come in that really nice wooden texture, and it also matches the barbecue that we also went with, to be honest, with the color swatches and stuff like that. And I feel like it very much connects with the rest of the furniture pieces that we do end up incorporating within the interior and the exterior. So yeah, I just feel like it feels like a very nice small little cozy outdoor area, and I feel like it felt really spacious to the point where we could pretty much just like add a very nice huge outdoor seating area. And of course, can't forget adding these small little plants here and there throughout this entire outdoor area, just like trying to make it feel as complete and lively as possible. It definitely does help with adding these small little clutter pieces here and there. And I decided to go for this very huge dining table which came from one of the recent events, and I really actually prefer this one quite a lot more from the other ones that we actually got from other packs. I feel like this one just feels a little bit more rustic, a little bit more realistic in comparison to the other dining tables that we have in the game currently. I feel like the other ones just feel a little bit too sort of fantasy like, or just like don't really resemble a real dining table area. And especially since I kind of focus on realism, I really love the overall end result that this table gives. And I ended up adding one of the businesses and hobbies standalone umbrellas right in the center of where we have that dining table, just to pretend as if it was like an outdoor furniture set piece, if that makes sense. And I ended up also using these modern looking outdoor seaters as well. I feel like they feel very appropriate, especially since they do have the same similar wooden textures and tones for the seater itself. And of course, just adding some small little details here and there, such as like some nice little greeneries. And for the main sun lounges that we incorporated for this backyard area, I decided to go for the ones that came from the Desert Luxe kit, solely because I just really love the color combinations that it comes with. I just feel like they feel very unique, and they definitely do match the rest of the color schemes that we have across this entire garden overall. And that's what I mean by like the incorporation of the traditional as well as the modern furniture furniture pieces across this entire build. You'll see crossovers between the two designs. However, I feel like it definitely makes this build feel very much a lot more complete. And you might actually notice that we have that very huge empty grass area, and we do actually end up populating that quite a lot. Once I end up having the Adventure Awaits expansion pack within the game, I ended up just placing one of the pre-made playgrounds. I did have a play around with it before actually recording. However, I definitely do think that the pre-made playgrounds are very versatile and definitely can be used quite a lot within your typical family homes. If I was to make like an individual outdoor sort of playground lot type, I definitely would have created my own area. However, for a small build like this, I didn't really mind using one of the presets, and it pretty much shows you guys what it ends up looking like, and I really love the overall end result of it. I believe I do end up editing it though and adding a slide on one of the sides. I just wanted to have as much playability and functionality added to this build as much as possible, so we do end up adding the huge water slide that ends up into the swimming pool as well. So yeah, we do have a bunch of different slides going across this entire build. And especially since it is heavily focused on just like that family focus, I really wanted to make sure that I incorporated all of those small little family features, and you guys will kind of see that pretty much as we progress throughout this entire build. I feel like it is a very family friendly home overall. And for the interior of this build, I did end up skipping all of the floor plan designs and stuff like that, mainly because I just feel like it's not really worth going over all of that tedious work, especially since most of it is trial and error, since I don't copy any of these like realistic floor plans online or stuff like that. I pretty much just like go with what I think works best with the house that I'm currently building, and that ends up always being unique. So it's kind of like always like a trial and error to ensure that every room is the best possible size it could be. But for the interior flooring, we did end up going for the businesses and hobbies wooden paneling, and I really love the overall look and design of it. And usually I wouldn't use this in an open floor plan designed home. However, for this build in particular, I feel like it felt relatively compact, and you'll see what I mean by that as we progress into the kitchen area, where we kind of struggle to add a little dining space area. By like, we don't really have a lot of empty space throughout this entire build, so I didn't really mind too much in using this very repeated patterned flooring. And for the walls, currently we have this plain white concrete walls. However, we do end up changing them as we progress throughout the build, and pretty much every single one of the rooms that we have within this build have their own accent walls and a bunch of different wallpapers and textures, so you guys don't have to worry about this entire home just being like a plain white walled design. It does end up changing quite a lot throughout this entire build. But for the main living space area, we have right at the entrance of the home, which is actually really close to the entrance as well as the backyard of the home, we just have these huge sliding glass doors which came from the base game update, and I really loved placing this living space right next to it, mainly because I just really like that indoor outdoor feel that it kind of gives. And I kind of went with one of my favorite designs for a living space, just by like adding the fireplace and the TV, which I feel like is kind of like everyone's go-to, to be honest. And I ended up also using the new Adventure Awaits 3-seater, which has this very nice wooden back paneling. I feel like it definitely feels very appropriate for a build like this, especially since we do incorporate a lot of wooden furniture pieces throughout the entire build. And of course use these small simple love seaters, the single armchair sort of designed ones that came from the Lovestruck expansion pack. And I also really love this accent wall table that we got from the Adventure Awaits expansion pack as well. I'm not going to lie to you guys, the items that came from this most recent expansion pack is definitely not my favorite, especially if you guys know me that I love all of my modern minimalistic designs. I feel like a lot of the designs within this expansion pack in particular had a lot of this like very harsh wooden textures and tones and stuff like that I feel like don't really fit nicely with the styles that I tend to go for. However, I still definitely do think that they do have certain objects that I feel like definitely do work nicely within wooden based homes like this, if that makes sense. And I feel like it still definitely worked out very nicely with this entire build overall. And for the kitchen area, we have this very open huge space with the living space and the kitchen being right behind it. And I decided to go for the base game kitchen cabinets, mainly because I really love the combination of the marble countertop with the wooden cabinets themselves, especially since this build has a very huge crossover between modern and traditional designs. I feel like that one worked out the best in my opinion, and especially since it is a base game kitchen cabinet, everyone is able to use it, so it's kind of like a win-win sort of situation. And I also ended up adding a small built-in fridge unit area on the other side of the wall as well, just like trying to use up as much of the space as possible. And especially since we didn't really have a lot of the space within this open area itself either, to be honest, we do actually end up having to get rid of a few of the island counters themselves as well, just to ensure that we're able to add a dining space within that open space area. And if I remember correctly, we went for the growing together oven and stovetop combo. I really like that one in particular, especially since it has those gold accents, and it matches very nicely with the ones that came from the Life and Death expansion pack as well, especially the fridge that we're currently using in that nice simple white and gold swatch. But yeah, so right now we just ended up minimizing the island counter space usage, and instead we just added this small modern little dining table right off to the side where we have that second sliding glass door, and we just added a small little dining table area. And in case you guys are wondering, for such a huge build like this, why do we have such a small space to work with? However, we will actually end up having a dedicated huge dining table area off to the backside of where we have this kitchen. So in case you guys want to host like a huge family, or if you guys just like play with huge families in general, it definitely will be a very nice and versatile space to be using. And yeah, so just like, I really like the compactness of this build overall. It just ensures that every single corner and every little space throughout this entire build gets used up, which I feel like is not really the case with a lot of these like huge modern family homes. But I feel like for a suburban family home like this, I feel like it kind of makes sense to just like have everything feel a little bit more compact. And you might notice that I'm actually using quite a few of the items that I genuinely wouldn't use quite often, especially like these dining table chairs themselves. I really like the look of them. I just feel like they don't fit that really super modern vibe that I tried to go for in my previous builds. But yeah, I really love the overall outcome of this entire house. Everything just happens to match very nicely together, especially with all of the color combinations that I have selected for all of the objects themselves. But yeah, so here is where we have that very huge spacious dining table area off to the back end of the kitchen area. And I also ended up going for the Adventure Awaits dining table, which is one of the new ones that came from the expansion pack. And I was actually super happy with going with this dining table in particular. I just feel like it looks really nice overall. It has that nice minimalistic wooden textures and tones going across the table itself, and the legs having a bit of a different color swatch to them as well definitely does make it stand out a lot more as well. And I really like how minimalistic and simple it looks. I feel like it's a very versatile piece that you can pretty much use in a traditional or a very modern home, just like trying to incorporate natural earthy elements. If that was the case, I feel like it works very nicely throughout any build, to be honest. And once again, just using these small accent tables on either side of the dining table areas, I just really love the overall look of them, to be honest, especially with those huge rounded handles. It just feels super realistic in my opinion. And I also ended up adding these two wicker like mirrors on the same side of the wall as well, just like try to add some small little details here and there, just like trying to populate it to make it feel as homey and comfortable as possible. And I also really like the paintings that came from that pack as well. I feel like it also feels very luscious and realistic by like picturing all of those adventurous areas rather than it just like being random pictures of like Sims or something like that. But yeah, so I also paired it with a very nice carpet, and that was pretty much it for this spacious dining area. We do also have two bedrooms on the first floor as well, along with a very spacious office area off to the entrance of the build. However, I don't end up showing that just for the sake of saving time for the speed build in itself. But if you guys are interested in seeing all of the rooms that this build has to offer, I highly recommend you guys stick around towards the end of the video to check out the tour, which pretty much goes around the entire build and shows you all of the rooms individually, so you guys can get an idea of what every single room looks like. So right now you guys can pretty much get a small idea of what the other rooms throughout the entire home look like around this speed build itself, because you guys can kind of see small little decorated bedrooms here and there. But right now we're just focusing on creating the primary bathroom that we have on the second floor, and we do also have quite a few en-suites throughout the entire build as well, so pretty much all of the bedrooms have their own en-suites. But yeah, so now we're finally moving on into the primary bedroom suite, and the overhanging room that we had from the second floor is actually where we have that master bedroom, which is this one. And this is pretty much the only bedroom throughout the entire home that has this modern look and design. All of the other bedrooms throughout this entire build pretty much have a more traditional style to them, and that would make a lot more sense if you guys do check out the speed build that I have towards the end of the video. But the main reason why I wanted to show this one in particular was because, as I mentioned earlier, we have that combination of the two styles, and that kind of is more prominent within this section of the build. And I really want to showcase the primary bedroom suite, because I feel like the primary bedroom suites always turn out to be some of the best ones that I enjoy creating within all of my speed builds. So I tend to create that one and showcase that one more often, especially since they kind of also share a lot more rooms throughout the entire second floor as well. So although we went for a very modern looking bed itself, I really love the Gothic fireplace that we sort of incorporated within that room. In case you guys are wondering, that fireplace did come from the Bella Goth kit that came out quite recently, to be honest, and I just really like the style that comes with that fireplace in particular. And we do also incorporate a bunch of different fireplaces across this build within all of the individual rooms as well, which I feel like just makes it feel a little bit more cozy overall. And yeah, so this is one of the small walk-in wardrobe areas that we have for the primary suite. It doesn't really take up too much space because I didn't want to waste a lot of it to just like a walk-in wardrobe area that is not really that necessary within The Sims. So I ended up using the walk-in wardrobe modular pieces to just make a small little custom area. And I also ended up using these Love Struck arches, which I feel like look very nice and versatile, and yeah, just like ends up connecting all of these small rooms together rather than using individual doors, which I feel like would have looked a little bit too repetitive, especially with how much little space that we had going on. And for the main ensuite area for this bedroom, I kind of went with a double sink unit area, and those two wooden styled sinks did come from the most recent expansion pack, and I actually really like how they look, mainly because I really like the floating aspect of it. I feel like we don't really have a lot of these floating sink unit pieces, and since we got one in a pack that is kind of focused on the exterior and like stuff that is very traditional, I was actually quite surprised, to be honest, because I wasn't really expecting something that modern to come out from it. Although it doesn't really match the Dream Home Decorator modular thin kitchen cabinet pieces, I still wanted to use it in between both of the sink units, mainly because I just wanted like a small little area where you can just like house some small clutter pieces and stuff like that, as if it's like a small little vanity area. And that was kind of like the main goal behind it, to be honest. And I also ended up going for the Snowy Escape toilet, as well as going for the Businesses and Hobbies bathtub and the sleek bathroom kit shower head, which I feel like, although it is quite modern for a house like this, we don't actually end up using any of those other objects in the other en-suites and the bathrooms, because I really wanted to feel a little bit more rustic, a little bit more traditional like, and just like use a lot more objects that feel a little bit more down to earth, to be honest, rather than using like some very high-end objects throughout the entire build, which I feel like is just like very exclusive for the primary bedroom suite itself. And for this small little nursery area, which is right opposite where we have the primary bedroom suite, I just went with one of my favorite designs for the nursery itself, just using some of the small, simple, grown together objects for the nursery itself, such as the crib and the changing table. And I also ended up using the Dream Home Decorator modular pieces to hang some of the kids' clothes together, which came from the Storybook nursery kit itself. But I still feel like it's like a very nice feature to just like hang the kids' clothes off to the side of where we have the changing table. It just makes it feel a little bit more luxurious, to be honest. Although it feels very compact within this small nursery area, we do actually have a spacious 2 toddler bed area right next to where we have the nursery, which houses a bunch of different objects as well as like some necessary nursery pieces as well. So you guys can pretty much use both of those spaces to just like house the nurseries and stuff like that, which I feel like makes it feel a little bit more luxurious, especially since there's pretty much 2 of those spaces within the entire build. And I did also end up adding some of the imaginary dolls throughout all of the nursery areas as well, just to add a bit of fun into the game in case you guys do end up playing with families. And finally, we're moving on into the gym area of this build, and I was just super excited to finally just be able to use those free weights with the dumbbells as well as the bicycle itself. I just feel like they're very crucial for a at-home gym, or any gym in particular, to be honest, and I'm finally glad that we're able to have them, and I'm super excited to showcase them within this speed build. But yeah, so besides adding all of the equipment into this at-home gym area, that is pretty much it for this entire speed build. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think by leaving a like and subscribing, and comment down below what your thoughts and suggestions are for this build. I would love to know in the comment sections below. And I do also have a bunch more videos like this on the channel if you guys are interested in builds like these. But thanks so much again for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video.